Obedience, the true measure of worship. Throughout Scripture, one principle stands as a foundation of genuine faith: obedience to God. Worship without obedience is an empty form. It may appear beautiful, but it lacks the fragrance of true devotion. God has always required that His people worship Him in spirit and in truth, John 4:24, not merely with outward acts, but through hearts surrendered to His will. Worship without obedience is not acceptable to God. True worship is not found in music, rituals, or offerings. It is found in a life that yields to the voice of God. The Lord Himself declared through Samuel, "Hath the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices, as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams." 1 Samuel 15:22. The Bible shows repeatedly that when worship is divorced from obedience, it becomes false worship. God rejects the worship of those who honor Him with their lips while their hearts remain far from Him. Isaiah 29:13, Matthew 15:8-9. The lesson of Cain and Abel. The first record of worship after the fall of man is found in the story of Cain and Abel, Genesis 4:1-7. Both brothers brought offerings before God. Outwardly, they came to worship. Yet God accepted Abel's offering and rejected Cain's. Why? Abel's sacrifice was offered in obedience to the divine instruction, a lamb representing the promised Redeemer. His faith was expressed through his obedience, Hebrews 11:4. Cain, however, chose to worship according to his own reasoning, offering the fruit of the ground, his own works, rather than the blood of the lamb, which pointed to Christ. Cain's worship was sincere but self-devised and therefore rejected. This reveals that sincerity alone does not make worship true. Only obedience to God's revealed will does. Worship that springs from self-will becomes rebellion, even if done in the name of religion. Israel and the golden calf, the peril of disobedient worship. When God descended upon Mount Sinai, His voice thundered across the wilderness as He proclaimed His holy law, Exodus 21:17. The people trembled, pledging to obey all that God had said, Exodus 24:3. Yet while Moses tarried 40 days in the mount, their faith wavered. They turned to Aaron and said, "Make us gods which shall go before us," Exodus 32:1. Out of gold, symbols of earthly glory, they fashioned a golden calf and proclaimed, "These be thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt." What a tragedy. Within a short time they forsook the living God for an idol of their own making. The people danced, feasted, and called it a feast to the Lord, Exodus 32:5. Yet their worship was false because it violated God's express command. This story shows that idolatry is not merely bowing to images, it is substituting our own will in place of God's. Whenever men worship in ways contrary to His word, they repeat the sin of the golden calf. The Sabbath, a test of obedience in the last days. Among the commandments spoken directly by God is the fourth commandment. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. The seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God, Exodus 20:8-10. This commandment is unique. It identifies the true Creator, sets a sign of loyalty, and is placed in the heart of God's moral law. Yet, in much of modern Christianity, this law has been laid aside. Many have substituted the first day of the week, Sunday, in place of the seventh-day Sabbath, though no such change is commanded by God in Scripture. This substitution mirrors the principle of Cain's offering and the golden calf, human tradition replacing divine command. Jesus warned, "In vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men," Matthew 15:9. Obedience, not custom, determines true worship. The Sabbath remains God's test of loyalty, an eternal sign between Him and His people, Ezekiel 20:20. To disregard it is to reject His authority as Creator and lawgiver. The heart of true worship is not about outward forms, but inward surrender. It is the harmony between faith and obedience, love and law, spirit and truth. Jesus said, "If ye love me, keep my commandments," John 14:15. Genuine love for God is always expressed through obedience. The redeemed will one day stand before His throne, described as, "They that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus," Revelation 14:12. In a world filled with counterfeit worship and religious confusion, the call of heaven still rings clear. Fear God and give glory to Him. and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters. Revelation 14:7. Lastly, from Eden to Sinai, from Calvary to the final judgment, God's standard has never changed. He seeks a people who will worship him in obedience, not according to their own traditions but in harmony with his revealed will.